Okay, this is going to be a little bit different. Um, Not that there's much of a normal on this channel, I would say. Really, what I want to say is I want this channel to be my thoughts on Assassin when I think those are relevant to contribute to the conversation. And I think I have some after some time. So I'm going to get into that. And if you wanted some kind of regular content, I'm sorry. Life's just been very busy. And that's how it is sometimes. So let's get into it, shall we? Bans. We've had bans. It's September 2nd, where they have been announced. I'm recording on the 2nd, at least in the US time. So it's recent, but I've had some time to think about it still. And why it's relevant, okay, why my opinion might be relevant, is because Bonds of Agony is on the ban list. So what you're looking at now is I'm going to talk about the bans, but we're also going to walk through kind of some of the history of it. And I also want to give some opinions. I want to be a little bit critical of how the process of bans has happened so far in Flesh and Blood in the history of the game. And I'll kind of walk you through using this whiteboard over on the right. I'll walk you through my thought process and maybe where we're headed or how I think presently the game is positioned itself with regard to balance. All right, so let's get into it. I'm going to start us off where I think kind of the beginning of this is. And I've made sort of I've set up this page here, this whiteboard, so that you can follow along the links if you want yourself. It's all there. And we're gonna have some talking points. So the first one, this is from September 4th of 24. So this is about a year ago. It's the first one I want to talk about. This is from James White himself. And there's this topic of action points in this article, which for the most part is about how games should flow, how games of Flesh and Blood should flow from the perspective of James. And there are some design principles he has to help guide those design decisions. So on the topic of action points, I want to take a look at this section. I'm going to record some notes as I do it so we can reflect back on the whole thing at the end. My font looks good. Okay. So on the topic of action points, we have the following, both bolded and italicized. The most egregious culprits. So let's find the context of this. We're talking about offensive overlaps in the game. So we want some offensive overlaps in order that games don't end in fatigue every time, but we don't want too many overlaps that games don't really have much play to them. We want both players to interact with the game. So the most egregious culprits of creating those negative play experiences are cards that immediately net additional cards without costing an action point. So I just want to underscore this. Okay. Cards. I guess I'll just copy and paste. We're sort of doing this on the fly. I have this outline of how I want the argument to be framed, but we're just gonna kind of discover together what consistency looks like in terms of bans and balance, or it doesn't look like. Part of this is, I think in my head, I've sort of noticed maybe some inconsistency. So anyway, first note, we have cards that immediately net additional cards without costing an action point. And I'm just going to kind of oops, not bookmarks. I'm gonna take this without costing an action point, and we're just gonna, this is not a good way to bold it. Okay, we'll just leave it like this. The reason I think this is important is because we're going to come back to the relevance of action points in the metagame with the September, this year's September ban list, as opposed to the one from last year. So already we can see there's this emphasis on, can you just play out your hand for free, essentially is what this is. What we might draw from this is cards that cost an action point can be more powerful. That's a conclusion we might draw. Something else we might say is cards that have go again need more scrutiny. So we have some kind of design principles to guide us with go again. This is from last year as written by James. All right. And I'm sure there's more that can be said about it, but we're just gonna frame that and leave it there for now. All right. So the next thing I want to talk about is we're going to take a look at November of 2024. So this is just a couple of months later. We have powerful combos as the topic I wanted to discuss. All right, powerful combos. So the context for this article, I guess I should start at the top. We ban high octane and blue count your blessing. All right, now let's go to the powerful combos. I'm just going to read this whole paragraph because I think it's pretty important. It references rewriting the book, which is the first ban list we looked at a couple of months ago. We did not ban high octane as part of the sweeping changes in September's rewriting the book announcement, because at that time we wanted to focus on the core issue driving extreme offensive overlaps. That was in their assessment, cards that draw more cards. Which makes sense. Everyone knows you have more cards in the end, you can do the offensive overlap better. Additionally, we wanted high octane to be legal for the World Championship. This is in Osaka of the same year, as an exciting part of the supercharged Dash.io deck, which we saw Sam Sutherland and Alan Lau both take the top 4 finishes. It's important to note that we view explosive, powerful combos as an exciting part of Flesh and Blood. Okay. Here's where I'll make the first note. Particularly at premier events where top players can both discover and adapt to such strategies. So we like combos and we like adapting to combos is rewarded, say. Adapting to combos in the metagame is rewarded. However, it's reasonable to suspect that these decks will be subject to a greater degree of balanced scrutiny after a breakout performance. So we have scrutiny after breakout performance. So I've summarized again in 3 points. I think that's probably how the rest of them will go as well. The LSS stance as of November 12, 2024 on powerful combos. Once again, I will draw some framing around this. Okay, so I've set the stage a little bit for, we have action points at a premium. It's, cards developed with access to action points, namely Go Again, but they could also be instants. They deserve more scrutiny. And we also have powerful combos that deserve scrutiny. Okay. I'm going to change the topic slightly. It's not about individual cards per se, although this ban list did include one. So May of 2025, there's this topic I want to talk about. First of all, Count Your Blessings is banned. We'll talk about the context of that. Here we are. Okay. I'll read this paragraph as well, or at least part of it. Opinions on Count Your Blessings gameplay were split down the middle and eventually distributed across our player base. Perhaps we'd hold the line, as the card is not presently performing at problematic levels. So they shout out that CYB decks, at this time, they only have access to yellow and red. They're not performing at problematic levels. However, it has become clear that Count Your Blessings style gameplay has a disproportionate impact on games at the Armory level. I'm just going to take this whole point into our notes. I'll abbreviate this as CYB so we fit it on the screen. Disproportionate impact on games at their Armory level, where players who choose strategies particularly vulnerable to life gain are left feeling hopeless week after week. So there is some implicit level assumption here. A few things. Life gain is a bad play experience. Maybe I'll say too much in quotes here, like too much life gain is a bad play experience. And there's another assumption that, well, maybe not an assumption, but a result of this ban list is LSS has essentially said that LSS will make bans for, quotes, Armory level. And that's the whole thought. LSS will make bans for Armory level. And maybe we could say especially, or I'll use the word scrutiny again, because that's kind of been the theme previously. Scrutiny is applied to Armory level. And let me not check spelling. Okay. So I think the way that I have collected the thoughts of LSS so far is that we're sort of building up a repertoire of where we apply scrutiny when we do a ban list. So cards that have Go Again or generate action points need scrutiny. Cards that create extreme overlaps through a combo need scrutiny, and scrutiny after a breakout performance is also listed in this one. And there's also scrutiny about Armory level play experience. Is it fun to engage with those cards or those strategies at an Armory level? So all of that is the backdrop, which takes us to today. And this is the reason I even made the video, is I was kind of like, I was just a little bit upset when I read this passage. A challenging quest. It's in the Bonds of Agony, which, I'm here to talk about Assassins, so I'm just going to focus on this part of today's BNR Bonds of Agony was intended to reward assassins for taking on a somewhat challenging quest of deploying multiple attack reactions to the same chain link. In turn, this gives the assassin's opponent a difficult defending decision. So before I put something in the notes about how many attack reactions, you just use the word multiple, go to the same chain link, I just want to remind everybody that Bonds of Agony came out in the same set as New, the first Mystic Assassin. So this is the first time an assassin even has the chance to abuse Bonds of Agony. In this set, we have Mystic Assassin attack reacts. They come in two forms. One of them is an attack reaction itself. The other form is onboard permanent equipment. So we have, or New had access to, 2 equipment slots that each gave 2 reactions, and New had access to up to 6 copies of attack react type cards that gave multiple reactions to a chain link. So the initial premise of the challenging quest was in the same set where the quest was the least challenging. So that's what I want to say as for the challenging quest. Why I even started this discussion is I think it's a little bit strange to frame the challenging quest for Bonds of Agony. We know that it can be easy. Okay, let me finish this first paragraph. Both of these propositions have begun to break down as the assassin card pool has expanded. I think this statement is also shaky because it's not like the propositions of attack reactions and defending choice have become harder. They actually started out as hard as possible when New could abuse how many attack reactions went on the chain link. The defending decisions around Bonds of Agony, when Arachne slipped through the cracks, okay, the first assassin called out as Arachne, not New. Let's see what's going on. Arachne Slippy starts the turn with it alongside, it being the bonds, a full group of cards, and it's simply impossible to make those defending decisions. This is the claim. There's almost no counterplay. There are almost no outs. There have to be qualifiers here for almost, because there do exist ways to not get hit by the spawns. But so they go on, over defend, and Slippy moves on to the next chain link and mauls you. Or you under defend, you're taking 12 or more damage, maybe losing your most important cards. With Take Up the Mantle in the mix, this decision is one theoretically faced on the vast maturity of turns in the game. It simply feels unfair. All right. So now I have 2 points for this ban list that I want to call out. We have, well, the challenging quest itself. So I'll just say see above quest. And then we also have it simply feels unfair. So let me try to square these, say, design suggestions that contribute to a ban with the ones we had seen previously. We have seen action points have scrutiny, combos have scrutiny, breakout performances have scrutiny, and armory level has scrutiny. So which of these things is closest? Which of the previous ban list principles for design are closest to what we're seeing now? To me, it's like this one. It simply feels unfair. To me, this is kind of close to LSS will make bans for the armory level, or scrutiny is applied to the armory level. At that time, life gained through counter blessings felt bad play experience. So feeling unfair is kind of similar to something that's already happened. All right. However, the quest. So let me rewrite this one now. A challenging quest. Quests that provide payoff should have substantial quest. In other words, it should not be too easy to do something powerful. So let's take a look at why it's easy for Bonds of Agony to do something powerful. In the current game state, the easy thing to make Bonds powerful is just to play Arachne Slip Through the Cracks. You have a full grip of cards, you cast the Bonds, the opponent has very few outs to defend, as they would argue. Now, I won't make the counterpoint that there are ways to defend. I think it's, we're past litigating that. But where I do have some issue is it Bonds of Agony that has too great of a quest or too easy of a quest, or the feeling of being unfair? Or is there actually somewhere in here a previous design consideration that we can look at? So we saw this feeling unfair. Okay, fine. It's not obvious what Bonds of Agony has to do with the other parts of the design principles. So we already know that scrutiny after a breakout performance is part of it. We haven't really had a slippy breakout performance. In fact, I'm not sure we had too many breakout performances from New in her time. And we want scrutiny such that players can adapt to combos. Okay, so perhaps we see a little bit of it's hard to adapt to Slippy's combo, if you can even call it a combo. But let's just say it's hard to adapt. I'll grant them that. And I want to go back to the first one. Cards that have Go Again need more scrutiny. Bonds of Agony doesn't have Go Again, but Slippy does. Slippy gives Go Again to every stealth attack in the deck, so long as it's the first one played on the turn. So what I'm seeing is, this is my opinion, what I'm seeing is the core issue really isn't Bonds of Agony, okay? The core issue is how they attach Go Again to Bonds of Agony in Arachne's case, or how easy it was for the quest to happen in the case of New. I don't really want to get into accrual of living legend points, when New got her points, and so forth, or that Slippy actually doesn't have too many points. I don't think that should be part of the argument. The metagame changes. The living legend point system has also changed over time. What I really want to do is just sit down and say, are the design principles that are informing these BNRs staying consistent? And to me, it seems like we just keep adding new ones. So new to this ban list is quests that provide payoffs should have a substantial quest. So a substantial journey, say. So as to not repeat myself. It should be hard to achieve power. Where what they could have done in designing Slippy is actually way simpler and goes back further in time. We just don't give out action points that readily. So it seems to me like this Bonds of Agony ban is not consistent with principles we already know about. Assuming we're taking the position of an LSS dev, we already know about these principles. So why is it Bonds of Agony and not Slippy who gets the design consideration? Now, I'm not saying Slippy shouldn't be a hero in CC. I just think what we're witnessing, this inconsistency, should be brought to light, and we should have a conversation about it. And we should wonder on future BNRs, are there going to be more design principles that LSS discovers, or will they choose ones that they've already done? And I don't think this is negative. I really, like, what I'm trying to do is just provide my critique, because I've been doing Assassin for a long time. You might say Assassin, their identity is kind of eroded over time, which I could probably find a BNR statement about class identity somewhere in the archives. I've only picked these 4 because length of the video would get too long. What is Slippy's identity exactly? Is it a ninja? Sorta, kinda. Is it a deck with evasive damage? Absolutely, because of attack reactions. What Slippy is not is an embodiment of the assassins that came before. You have go again on every card, just about. Or it doesn't consume your action point, just about. It's a complete departure. It doesn't follow this initial principle at all, really. And I think that's the thing to call out. Okay, there's more to the BNR. I won't go through that. Gravy Bones got hit. Good for him. Bad for the Gravy Bones players, maybe. Maybe they can adapt. I want to talk about where to go from here so that there's some positivity just to close things out. Where does Assassin go now that even more of their identity got eroded with this ban? Well, I think you have some options. I'm gonna take a look at them. The ones that are left in CC. Slippy, I think, will stay largely the same. The way Slippy is built, I think, will be pretty similar. I think mostly you'll want to tune the stealth cards you have left available to where the metagame goes. So let's say there's a lot of aggro, you want your infiltrates and your Art of Desire body, these ones that gain extra value when they hit. You won't be able to rely on the disruption from bonds. So maybe we look elsewhere for more disruption with Slippy. I'm not sure yet. Maybe something like Censor could come in. That's a really fun card in Assassin in general. And I think that type of disruption is pretty cool and underexplored. Arachne Huntsman. This one is a little bit unfortunate in my opinion. I think Huntsman had a bit of identity as a fatigue-oriented assassin, using Bonds of Agony as a primary tool for kind of removing threats from the opponent's tech. That way of interacting with the opponent, where it's not about the individual turn. Did they take 12 plus damage from bonds and their threats are gone? It's more about, are their threats gone? Is the opponent able to overcome my defenses now that I've taken away part of their strategy? So I'm hoping cards printed for specifically Huntsman can get us toward that identity. And we've seen already a spoiler from Super Slam upcoming defense reaction that does get Huntsman some of that identity back. Hopefully it's enough. I'll go to Uzuri next. Another one of the OG assassins. Uzuri's kind of had a funny timeline in the game. Her best matchup ever is probably Lexi, and Lexi is long gone. So at the same time, she's won a Pro Tour by targeting very specifically the Zen matchup in Amsterdam. So Uzuri from here, I think, is the most flexible, if you will. I don't think she relied on Bonds of Agony too much. It was a powerful card on her. You could choose to run it with just a Nick paired if you wanted. Gave the opponent some defending decisions that are pretty interesting. So without it, I think you can slot in other stealth cards. Maybe you also tried to work out how to make the Chelicera work in her shell. It's kind of tricky, but if you can get Chelicera generation at a good pace in the game, then her hero power can shine with that. And it offers you, again, a piece of identity. And then for Mario, I think this is the one where the bonds ban, to me, is the most a shame, because Mario didn't abuse it at all. I think really of any of these heroes, Mario was the least abusive of it, but it provided some offensive overlap that gave you a way to interact with the agents of chaos. So the agent being transformed helps you do that thing, completing that difficult quest of hitting all 3 reacts on the bonds. But it wasn't guaranteed. You had to plan your turnaround. Sometimes you parked that bonds and arsenal as Mario, and it never materialized. You never got the 3 reacts. I think it was a really good embodiment of actually doing the quest, and it was challenging. And you had to play very, very tight play to get it to work. So to me, Mario still has plenty of options. Probably the strongest assassin following this ban list. Because if you want, you can basically just ignore the bombs ban and go for a full dagger route, which part of Mario's identity is kind of that warrior cosplay, play all the dagger buffs and just try to play for good value. And then you have the agents of chaos, this little side plan of, you can transform into them. They give your Chelicera an on-hit, sometimes with disruption. So that's an angle. I think there are still angles to play stealth in Mario, but they're going to be harder to figure out because Bonds was such a powerful piece in that archetype. Okay, I think I've yapped enough. Please respond in the comments if you want to talk about it. Again, I actually don't think LSS is right or wrong per se on any of these points. I just wanted to shed some light on my thinking. Where is there consistency? Where is there not? And what can we expect? So thank you for watching. I'm going to sign off and see you in the comments and at events soon, hopefully. All right. Bye-bye.